Welcome to SelfCare Toolkit. This is the first workshop that I'll be doing out of some weekly workshops uh, that will be up every Friday at 3:30, with the exception of fall break and Thanksgiving break. Just a little FYI. The slides that I'll be sharing during this live stream are all available online, at least for the next week. If you just go to tinyurl.com/selfcareusu. So just a little bit about this workshop series. This is provided by Utah State University through the following organizations on campus. So Counseling and Psychological Services, the College of Education and Human Services, and the School of Graduate Studies. So all three of these organizations on campus worked together to create my position, which is an embedded psychologist for the College of Education and Human Services. And so as part of my role here, I provide counseling that's specifically for graduate students in the College of Education and Human Services. And I've created this workshop series as kind of another way to get information out there specifically for students within this college. However, of course, you're free to share this information with anybody that you think that it might be helpful for. A quick note about that counseling for graduate students. If you would like to reach out to see me for counseling through the College of Education and Human Services and CAPS, you can contact the USU CAPS front desk, like any student can. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you're also welcome to just reach out to me individually and over email, and I'll get you scheduled. Another thing I just want to make a quick note about. So I'll be talking about mental health topics at each of these workshops, and I definitely hope that this information is useful to you all. And at the same time, I want to emphasize that this is not intended to substitute or replace getting mental health care. So if you or somebody that you know is in need of some help, please do seek out a qualified therapist. This is just, what we call psychoeducation, just providing a little bit of information to get you started, but definitely cannot substitute for getting mental health care if that's what you need. I also wanted to make a quick note that the workshop topics that I came up with here are just kind of ones that I have commonly come across students and sometimes faculty and staff needing. And I would absolutely gladly welcome other ideas. So if you have ideas for workshop topics that you think would be helpful to you, that you think would be helpful to students, graduate or undergraduate, definitely let me know. I'm happy to provide other information or to seek out resources that might have more information than I do. I also would love to get any feedback that you have about this workshop, positive or negative. So feel free to reach out over email and let me know. And finally, if you have a question for me, whether it's a question that you might like to see answered through these workshops or just kind of generally speaking, you can reach out to me at the email address listed below, and that's angela.eno@usu.edu. All right, so getting started with self-care. Before I get into talking at all about self-care and this self-care toolkit, I wanted to really acknowledge the fact that self-care in the time of COVID is both especially important and also harder than usual. All over the world right now, burnout is at an all-time high. There are higher rates of depression and anxiety than normally there would be. People who have never had experiences with this are experiencing that now. And people who already maybe might have struggled with their mental health are struggling even more. So I just want to put that out there and acknowledge that's something that we're all kind of living with and maybe being impacted to varying degrees depending on identity factors and vulnerabilities. A couple of things that go along with that, nobody signed up for this pandemic. We didn't want this. Nobody, could have anticipated or opted into the feelings of fear for the sickness that maybe ourselves or people around us are experiencing, the social distancing that's made us all like pretty isolated, and really just changing up all of our both individual and collective routines that we're so used to. None of us, opted into this. It wasn't something we had a choice about. And in those times when we're experiencing something so stressful that we didn't opt into, that we didn't choose, that heightens our level of stress in an incredible amount. So I just want to acknowledge how hard that is for all of us. We didn't sign up for having to live our lives by phone or video instead of face to face. We didn't sign up for bringing work home with us and having work be part of our home life and our home life part of our work life, and the confusing boundaries that creates, making it harder for us to leave work at home or leave work at work and not take it home sometimes because it's at home, and we also didn't sign up for the risk we take when we can't work from home, when we have to go in public, when we get groceries, when we, our jobs require us to work around other humans. And so all of these things are things that create a lot of distress. It's also true that some things are not exactly the same as they were when we were face to face. We can't just do the same thing we've always done over the phone or by video. Things change. Some aspects of our job become a lot harder. There's some flexibility that we need, and sometimes we have to adjust our expectations and ask others around us to adjust their expectations of us, and all of that is super understandable. And so I just want to encourage everybody to have some patience with yourself, patience with others. We really have to stay flexible and continue to adjust. And that requires a lot of us. And also it's the best way we can support ourselves and support each other through this time. We really need to extend ourselves and other people as much support and understanding as we can. Who knows how long we're going to be dealing with this. And our responses, the way we feel about things, the boundaries that we're able to and want to set for ourselves in this time of COVID, that all can change day to day as things around us change. I know I've experienced with myself varying degrees of comfort and discomfort depending on, the vaccine coming out, getting vaccinated, not getting vaccinated, what was going on with my personal health. And even as I watched other people around me, when other people around me were getting COVID, that kind of changed how I felt about things versus when they weren't. And so all of us, can experience shift even in the same day in how we're feeling about things, our level of security and comfort. And so all of these things are making self-care harder, more confusing. And I just want to acknowledge all of that before really getting into this self-care stuff. I know we didn't sign up for a COVID workshop here, and we all get a little bit tired of hearing about it, I think, sometimes. But I also wanted to acknowledge that as this ongoing backdrop of what we're talking about. All right. So a couple of things to keep in mind. It's super, super important that we are all engaging in self-care and treating self-care as a priority. And it is not always easy to do. A couple of things I hear over and over again from people in therapy and when I do these workshops to different groups is, isn't self-care selfish when there's so many people that need so much, especially at a time like this? There are so many things that I could be doing. Why would I prioritize me? Also I hear, but isn't that the kind of the last thing on the list after homework, after work, after family, after this, after that? I think unfortunately we definitely live in a culture, at least here in the US, and I'm sure there are other cultures around the world that have that, where we're kind of taught that this idea that self-care is kind of the thing you do if you have the time left over. But that's absolutely an unhealthy way to look at this. Self-care is important to keep us sustained, keep us going. And so, I really want to push back on those ideas that it's selfish or that it's problematic in any way. It's super important. We need self-care for ourselves in order to keep us strong, physically, emotionally, in every way. and healthy and balanced. But we also need it for our loved ones. People get the best version of us when we are taking care of ourselves, and they need to know that they can lean on us when they need to, appropriately and with boundaries. And when we're doing good self-care, then other people can trust that they can lean on us. They can trust that we're going to be able to support them, whether that's people in our personal life or people maybe we serve in our various roles as students and as professionals in training. We also need it for our work, whether that's more traditionally career work, whether that's school work, whatever work that you're engaged in your life, activism work even. In order to keep doing that work, we have to be strong, we have to be healthy. And so self-care is really the foundation that sets us up to be able to do all those things. So I would encourage everybody who hears this message to really try to challenge those thoughts within yourself that tell you have to put yourself last and that this isn't important, because it's super important. And not only is it okay, it's crucial and it's healthy for you to do some self-care and to sometimes put that before everything else. Self-care means that you give the world the best version of you instead of just what's left over, after everything else has taken from you. And so if you want to show up to work, if you want to show up to school, if you want to show up to your relationships, being the best you that you can be, self-care is such an important component of that. And it's really easy to lose track of that. So even though it is important, even though self-care is something that we need and that matters, it is incredibly hard for most people to do. And particularly people who are in helping professions, which is most of the students within the College of Education and Human Services, and frankly, most of the staff and most of the faculty as well. Whether you're a teacher or a nurse or a physical therapist or a psychologist or a marriage and family therapist, all of these are helping professions and the many more that fall within our college. And so it's especially crucial for people within our college, but it's crucial for everybody. But it's hard to do, no matter how important it is. And here are some of those reasons why it's hard to do, and especially hard for people in those kind of caregiving roles. First of all, we care. You don't become a teacher. You don't become a therapist. You don't become, a professional in a service industry if you don't care about people and want to make other people's lives better. And so that in and of itself can make it really hard for you to feel comfortable with setting the boundaries that you need. Sometimes we feel pressure, whether it's pressure we're putting on ourselves or pressure other people are putting on us, pressures of school, pressures of family, pressures of work. Sometimes pressure really leads us to feel like I just absolutely cannot prioritize my self-care because I have all of these other things that I need to be doing. Another thing that comes up a lot, and I see this, in people from all walks of life, but I see it especially among graduate students and like honor students, really high achieving people, is sometimes we're chasing away insecurity by being overproductive. We're proving that we have worth, that we're good people, that we matter in the world by just like working ourselves into the ground. And that doesn't help anybody. It really doesn't. And at the end of the day, no matter how much you chase away that insecurity, it's still there in the background. So if that's what's going on for you, that might be something worth looking at and saying, how does trying to chase away insecurity and make myself feel better about myself contribute to me not taking care of myself in the ways that I deserve? Sometimes it's just that we were never taught. We weren't taught how to do good self-care. That's true for many people. And sometimes we were even taught the exact opposite of self-care. Sometimes we were taught to neglect ourselves, to push ourselves harder and harder and harder, to not give ourselves the space that we need to be healthy and strong and relaxed even. And so sometimes it's learning and sometimes it's even unlearning some of the negative messages that we might have received or the unhelpful messages we might have received. Sometimes it's because we don't truly understand just how important it is. We know how important it is to perform well at work and perform well in school. We know how important it is to be there for our friends and our family, but maybe we don't truly understand just how important it is that we turn inward, that we take care of ourselves, that we make sure our needs are met. Okay. And sometimes it's that others around us don't know the importance. And so maybe you have an advisor who is just like really pushing you hard and doesn't quite understand how important it is for you as a student to keep on taking care of yourself even while being in a demanding program. Maybe it's, family members who don't understand how important it is and encourage us to prioritize them or prioritize kind of their agenda over our self-care. It could be just about anybody, but we often have, people in our lives, organizations in our lives that really influence us. And we even have a culture, like I mentioned before, at least here in the US, that can sometimes, encourage us to be unaware of the importance of that or to deprioritize it and think of it as not important. Okay. So I wanted to mention this idea of affirmations, and this is something we talk about a lot in the therapy world. And they're just kind of statements that we can say to ourselves that help us feel a little bit stronger and secure in our position, and maybe a little more positive about ourselves. And so here are just some examples that I've either come across or written myself. Yours don't have to match these, but here's some that could be a starting point for you. I get to disconnect and detach with love for myself and others. I don't have to be on all the time. I don't have to always be in my feelings and available and open to just taking in emotions of other people and other situations. I get to have some time where I'm just with myself. I choose to be mindful, including being mindful of my own needs. I choose to make time for sleep. I get to go outside and get moving for no other reason that I know it's good for me, Whenever I can. Sometimes we don't have the choice, right? Privilege sometimes plays a role in what we can choose and can't choose. And sometimes there are situations we just really don't have a choice in. But whenever I can, it's okay to choose which battles are worth fighting and which ones I just don't have it in me to fight, at least for today. It's healthy for me to spend time on enjoying the relationships that matter in my life. I don't have to always put those on the back burner to work. It is healthy. It is positive for me to sometimes say, you know what? My kid comes first. My partner comes first. My mom comes first, whoever, I don't have to be everything to everyone. None of us can be, nor should we try to be. That's a great way to get even more burned out. And so if that's something you struggle with, really work on reminding yourself, you don't have to be. We all have multiple resources in our lives that can help us. I get to allow others to take care of themselves. I choose to schedule and prioritize what matters to me, not what other people say should matter to me, but what truly does matter to me. It's healthy for me to take a break, and I get to say no sometimes. So, if none of those are ringing true for you, maybe you could take a second and jot down what would be an affirmation that works for you. All right, now I want to share that self-care toolkit that I mentioned. And so this comes from a website called Therapist Aid. I just want to put a plug there. I don't have any association with Therapist Aid at all. I don't have, I don't get paid by them. I've never met the person in charge of it, but I use this website all the time for myself, for the clients that I work with, occasionally sharing something with a friend or a family member, because they have so many helpful worksheets, all kinds of useful information. One of my favorites is this self-care assessment. It is such a great tool for being able to evaluate what your strengths are in terms of self-care and maybe some areas that you could beef up and improve on. Of course, it's not going to be exhaustive. There might be things that you would add to that. Other domains that, of self-care that you'll think of that aren't included in this assessment, but it's a great place to start and kind of get the wheels turning for you. So I wanted to share a little bit about what this self-care assessment looks like. And as a quick reminder, you can download these slides if you go to tinyurl.com/selfcareusu within a week after this live stream. And if you don't get the time to do that in that week, just email me and I'm happy to share them. That way you can just click right here to go to Therapist Aid. And there's a couple of other links that I'll share in these slides too that you can just click on and get right where you need to get. But you can also just search Therapist Aid or type therapistaid.com in your browser. So right here, what I have is what you'll see when you first get to therapistaid.com. And you can just type in that search box, self-care, to find this specific worksheet. I'd also recommend, if you have time, just kind of browse around and see. As you can see, looking at this image here, it's all kinds of interesting topics. And there are some for kids, some for adults, really cool, useful website. So after you type in self-care, you should see both a self-care worksheet or self-care assessment and self-care tips. So what I'm going to suggest you click on is self-care assessment. And when you do, you'll see this green button that I have this red arrow pointing to that says download free worksheet. Go ahead and click on it. I promise that nothing terrible is going to happen. I've gone to this website a bunch of times, and it'll download this great PDF for free that you can work on. They also have, a paid version that's customizable. I've never tried those, can't speak to those, but you can download that free PDF and boom, there's the worksheet right there for you. Now, this is what the top of that worksheet looks like, and I want to point out a couple of really cool things about this self-care assessment that I love. So this allows you to get started by saying, like, okay, this is something I'm really good at. And this is something I'm not good at. It gives you this rating system, 1 to 3, I do this poorly, to I do this well, or I do this rarely or not at all, to I do this often, just depending on, kind of your view based on the questions that are asked. And then it has another little box for you to say, to just put a star that I'd like to improve at doing this, or I'd like to do it more frequently. Okay. And then this is what each of the little areas of self-care look like. So you're going to check 1, 2, or 3 to rate how you're doing already on this. And then you're going to star it if it's something you want to work on more. I chose to highlight this section of professional self-care because it's something I never thought about when I thought about what it means to do self-care. Some of these are just so great. Professional self-care includes saying no to excessive new responsibilities. It includes making time to talk and build relationships with colleagues, not just always have, your nose to the grindstone or whatever, the expression might be. Having a comfortable workspace, advocating for fair pay and benefits and other needs. So many great ideas about how to take good care of yourself in the professional realm. And that's just one of the areas where it has some great ideas. So the self-care assessment on this website includes physical, psychological, and emotional, social, spiritual, and it's kind of broadly speaking with spiritual, and professional. Now, I'm sure people watching this, you may have your own areas you would think of as well, but maybe, looking over these will kind of get the ball rolling. What I love about this self-care assessment is it really encourages you to think about self-care in a holistic way. I think about a student at a workshop that I presented a couple of years ago who said, I think I get this impression that self-care is just about, taking a bubble bath or going shopping and all of these things that are kind of bougie and not really all that accessible to me sometimes and don't, in my opinion, make a really big difference on how I'm feeling day to day. And that's not at all. That's just like one idea of what self-care is. It's so many other things. And what I love about this self-care assessment is that it helps you take stock of a whole wide variety of things that you could be doing and broaden your idea of what self-care is, get ideas for improving your self-care, and really kind of challenge that idea that it's these kind of pop culture ideas of self-care that we have out there. Self-care is so much deeper than that. Self-care should be something that really has an impact on how you're doing, something that makes your life happier, that takes off some of the stress, makes you better able to do the things that matter to you in this life. And so this self-care assessment can be a springboard to kind of get your thoughts going about how might you do that. And I'm sure you'll come up with other ideas too. Maybe this will kind of inspire you to look for other ways you could self-care. Maybe you could ask on your social media and find out from your friends and family members and mentors, how do they do self-care? And what do they think of as the things that are included in that? I also wanted to mention, this is something that I mention in almost every presentation that I give, and I'm actually going to do a whole workshop on it later this semester. But one really special kind of self-care that's close to my heart is progressive muscle relaxation. This is a tool that's just amazing for anxiety. So I just kind of wanted to put a plug in there for that. If you download these slides, there is a link. You can click right there on the slide where it says progressive muscle relaxation, or look in the notes. And it'll link you to a YouTube video that I often use, both for myself and for clients in therapy. It's great for dealing with anxiety. It's great for just unwinding at the end of your day. It's great for helping you fall asleep if you're having a hard time falling asleep. I even like to do it sometimes just on my lunch break or midday, just to help me get into a calmer space. So check that out. I also wanted to mention a couple of COVID specific resources that might help you with your self-care. So this is a podcast episode from the American Psychological Association. And if you download the slides, you can just click right there on those words to get to this website pictured here. It's also available on all the major podcast platforms, and also you can play it straight from this webpage or go to YouTube and play it. It's just talking about coronavirus anxiety, which many of us are experiencing. Similarly, here's a project with all kinds of tools for coronavirus anxiety that I wanted to share, because this could also be stuff that you're incorporating into your self-care, just acknowledging the impact that it maybe has had on you. And finally, this disaster distress helpline. It's available for any type of disaster, and coronavirus being one of those, although there are many others as well. Just want to put a plug in there for the future workshops that I'll be doing. So today we talked about the self-care toolkit, short and sweet. Next time I'll be talking about help for the helpers, burnout and compassion fatigue. And this is really for, anybody in a helping profession, whether it's nursing, whether it's, speech and language, pathology, whether it's physical therapy, anybody who is in a helping role with other human beings and is experiencing some burnout from that, and something called compassion fatigue that can happen when we spend a lot of time helping other people. This can even happen if you're the person in your family or friend group that people talk to a lot. So it's a great tool that I think most people could really benefit from. And as we go on through the semester, I'll talk about some very specific strategies, and I'll go into quite a lot of detail in that one for improving your sleep. I'll do a workshop in October, late October, on progressive muscle relaxation, where you get to actually practice it along with me, and I'll do it with you. Excellent thing to do. And what better time than at the end of a Friday? Your Mind Lies to You is all about typical thought patterns that we have that can lead to more anxious and depressive thinking. And so I'll present that and a worksheet or two, probably two, that will help you challenge those thoughts. The next one is all about getting through a crisis. So I like to think of it as crisis survival skills. This one is really good if you're having panic attacks frequently. I just want to know, but it can also be just you're having a particularly rough day. What are some things that get you through and able to get on with your day? Kind of short-term coping skills. On November 12th, I'm going to talk all about grief and how that can look different for different people, what you might expect to experience as you're grieving. This is especially poignant, of course, if you have had somebody die that you love, including a pet. But it can also be grieving when there's a certain, a big transition in your life, or the loss of a friendship, or the loss of a partnership. Sometimes those signs of grief can show up for those too, and they can be pretty similar to the things that people experience when they've actually, lost somebody to death. It's just a few things to think about. Stop doing that is one of my favorites as well. It's a great way. If you have impulsive behaviors, you keep doing things you wish you wouldn't do, but just in the moment, you kind of just flew with what you were feeling, and you don't really know how to stop yourself from doing that in the future. This is a really great tool called chain analysis that will help you not do that anymore. The first workshop in December is going to be all about if you're in a relationship in your life, whether that's a romantic relationship, friendship, parent-child relationship, work relationships, relationship with a classmate, that has you asking yourself if you're crazy, might that be a sign that there's something really unhealthy about this relationship? And so it'll be kind of a chance for you to check in and say, wait a minute, is there something wrong here? What are some of the signs, that something is wrong in this relationship? We'll go into quite a bit of detail about some of the things you might notice and how that might be affecting you. We'll skip for Thanksgiving break, of course. And that's right before the Am I Crazy? And next is relationship effectiveness. And so we'll talk about balancing your needs with your relationship and with your self-respect. And then finally, power of positivity is based in something called positive psychology, and how it can really impact not only if you're feeling depressed, but just generally your overall level of happiness in this world. What are some of the things that people who tend to be happier tend to do? And how can that contribute to your happiness if you bring those things in? So I want to thank you if you've hung in there with me through all of this, and hope that you'll join me again for future workshops. And again, I just want to put another plug in there. If there's something you're wondering about that has to do with mental health and psychological and emotional well-being, even if it's not something that you think is necessarily so serious you'd need to go to therapy for it, but something you're wondering about, or something that, you'd like to get advice about, I guarantee you there's other people out there who could also use that information. So don't be shy about sending me an email and letting me know. I'm not going to share with anybody who sent me that email or what you said in it, but just make a suggestion for the workshop, and I'll be happy to consider that, maybe for spring term, or maybe even doing a bonus workshop sometime in addition to these Friday 3:30s. And if you have any feedback for me about how these can be improved, I'd love to hear it. All right. And so until next Friday, I'm signing off and wishing you all a great week. Take care.